our two nations. We discussed our summit, which begins tomorrow, and the important role that Australia and its Asia Pacific play. And I certainly indicated to the Prime Minister NATO's increased focus on the Indo-Pacific. Spain has strongly condemned Russia's actions in Ukraine, has provided and humanitarian support there. Our shared commitment to upholding the international order is more important than ever in the wake of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Our discussion went across a wide range of areas for over an hour, and it was, I think, symptomatic of the strength of the relationship that the Prime Minister gave Australia so much time in that bilateral meeting the day before he hosts the NATO summit. We did discuss the implications for Europe of what is happening post the Russian invasion of Ukraine, with pressure on oil prices and access to energy. The Spanish Prime Minister indicated that we have a similar response to the response here in Spain. It's been a reminder of the need to step up when it comes to renewable, to step up the transition to clean energy by taking action on climate change is playing a central role. Spain and Europe, their leadership. We also had an extensive discussion about trade diversity, and Australia, of course, has been having discussions with Europe about a trade deal. Those discussions essentially have stalled. There was one only in the last 12 months, which is not the way that these deals progress to completion. And it was clear that there were two impediments there. One, Australian relationship with France and the breakdown that had occurred in recent times, given France's leadership role in Europe. And the second was Australia's position on climate change, where by Europe and indeed by the world, that Australia was a handbrake on global action on climate change, was clearly hindering our capacity to enter into relationships with our European friends. The EU trade deal is Europe is Australia's second largest trading partner. It's the second largest investor in Australia. The European economy is 24 trillion Australian dollars strong, and with 400 million people, this is a market where Australia can really benefit from progressing this trade deal. The Spanish Prime Minister indicated much his support for that deal going ahead. There will need to be discussions, and this afternoon when I have further meetings, including with the Prime Minister of the Netherlands, it will be a common to the bilaterals here in Madrid. In addition, this afternoon I have a meeting, a bilateral, with the President of the Republic, and after those discussions I will attend the function commemorating the beginning of the NATO summit being hosted by the King and Queen of Spain. Happy to take questions.
Prime Minister, when do you hope that you might be able to get an EU trade deal now that you have this Mr. Sanchez, and also given that you're headed to Paris for a relationship reset with Mr. Macron?
Well, for an EU trade deal to progress, to be a fair bit of advance by the beginning first quarter of 2023, given when European elections are on, given that it's around about 12 months to then progress through the stages where it would have to progress both in Australia and Europe. So I'm hoping for coming months to really see an acceleration of that. I have, after the meeting with the Prime Minister Sanchez, I had a discussion with as well our Trade Minister. The Spanish Trade Minister will be visiting Australia in very soon, as well as there are a couple of others of trade ministers from Europe visiting Australia for discussions. Those will make the announcements in partnership with our in Europe, in those European countries at the appropriate time.
Mr. Australia's previous position on climate change was hindering an EU free trade deal. Could you explain how that is, given what you mean by that? Where exactly?
To use an Australian term, about taking action on climate change. That was something that was having an impact on our relations with our friends in Europe. Europe is considering, for example, penalties on nations that aren't taking action on climate change, and it was very clear that the changed position of Australia has been noticed, has been welcomed, and Prime Minister Sanchez reflected.
Prime Minister,
just on the air warfare destroyers, did it come up, and what was your response to Prime Minister Sanchez?
Yeah, well, it was raised. The Spanish have provided support for 7 naval vessels, 3 destroyers, as well as other naval craft, and they've done that in a way which has benefited Spain and Australia. Spain are looking at the offer to provide more support. What I indicated to the Prime Minister was that would be in the context of the Defence Force Forward Posture Review that is taking place. We'll be appointing someone independently to conduct that review. It'll be about our assets, our capabilities, about how we go forward, given that we will need increased defence spending in the future, but what we need to do is to make sure that we get every dollar of that spending goes to improving our capability. That's the context in which we'd give consideration to it.
the G7 looks set to push ahead with Russian oil imports. Do you support that, and what advice are you getting as to what it could have on world prices and therefore Aussie fuel prices?
Well, we'll have discussions about that. Take advice. The G7, of course, have had an important discussion over recent days, and the context of that is very similar to the which this NATO summit is taking place. The Russian invasion of Ukraine is not just on, of course, most importantly, is the impact on the people of Ukraine, including the innocent civilians who've been targeted by Russia's actions, including the rather extraordinary missile strikes on in recent days. But it's also having an impact on Europe. It's having an impact on the world. We need to consider which is there. It's also been, as Prime Minister Sanchez indicated, it is a chance post that event as well as the pandemic, an assessment of how do we emerge from these two events, respond in a way that protects the national interest as well, because Russia's invasion has an impact on global inflation, it's having an impact on global economies, and it's placing pressure on individuals regardless of how far away they are from the direct conflict. It is a reminder that even an island continent like Australia is not immune to these impacts, which is one of the reasons why not just myself but the leaders of New Zealand, Japan are here as well, participating in the NATO summit.
Yeah, just further to Andrew's question, every crisis comes with opportunity, and I imagine you're expecting leaders will come to you and ask for more gas, more coal, which we've got plenty. What concerns have you got that the the crisis in Ukraine could cause or worsen of supply of coal and gas in Australia?
Well, it is having impact in Australia, but it's also having impact, particularly impact here in Europe. Spain has quite a strong renewable sector. Spain, from memory, I think the Prime Minister said it was around about 6 to 8% of their energy needs are met through Russian gas. So the impact here, the economy is less than the impact on Germany, for example. But it is having an impact on Australia as well. We know that the impact because of global pricing is having an impact on Australian energy prices as well, on Australian families.
In terms of,
No, you go, Rob.
do you have advice in terms of Australia's capacity to production?
Well, Australia, of course, is a major supplier of gas, and one of the issues that has occurred in Australia, though, in recent years, is that there's been problems due to, in terms of coal production, due to natural disasters. It's impacted on the production levels. That's had an impact on our domestic market as well as on our export market. So those issues, of course, are being worked through. I think that Madeleine King, as our Resources Minister, and Chris Bowen, as our Minister, deserve a great deal of credit for presiding over a situation which was extremely difficult. There was talk about blackouts. That didn't occur, and they deserve credit for their leadership, but also that the Australian regulator, the Australian Energy Market Operator, did, I think, a very in intervening to suspend the market when it was appropriate, and then working back towards the market as a result. That's right.
How do you strike that balance in terms of being part of those global efforts? Yes, hurt Putin for what he's doing, but also ensuring that domestic considerations, hikes and inflation are taken care of? Well, does one have priority?
It's a false dichotomy with respect, I believe. No alternative but to stand up against Vladimir Putin's aggression. If we do not do that, the consequences for of law and the relationship between states which are sovereign and with each other, particularly in terms of Europe, are dire indeed. And the consequences then for our region as well. Putin is allowed to just proceed in a way in which states say this is too difficult and not provide the support that is provided to the people and the democratically elected government of Ukraine, then it's not just a matter of the messages that are sent. The economic down the track for nation states, where they are in the globe, and bear in mind that what is happening in Russia and Ukraine having an impact, yes, on advanced economies like here in Europe and in Australia. It's also having dire consequences in terms of food and people starving in parts of the world. Africa. We have, because of the embargo, the blockade, Ukrainian wheat and produce getting out. So this is a sense whereby this is a moral position, foremost, that overrides everything, but it's also an economic position as well, whereby we believe in good order, then you have to see that the world is right to stand up in the way countries have and in the way that their partners have, including the AP. Australia is right to be the largest non-NATO contributor. International citizens, our standing and our future economic as well, can't be hostage to the sort of barbaric action we've seen from Russia in invading a sovereign nation state and seeking. This is one of those fundamental questions that we have. Stands with our friends in NATO, including our friends in Spain. And that was something that was indicated by me very strongly, that we have strong resolve on these issues, and Vladimir should be under no illusion that the world is just going to say, we'll just move on.
PM, just in the context of all that, what message in particular take from the international community's response to Russia?
The world is determined to respect international order, and that the world being united and brought together with our common sense of purpose. One of the issues that we discussed with the Spanish Prime Minister today was the application in Finland towards joining NATO. Now, nations that have a history of standing apart, of neutrality, such a long period of time. But here you have NATO, and those nations that are prepared to stand up for democracy, for human rights, for respect of the sovereignty of nations, and for NATO, will continue to stand up for those rights. And that is something that is a message to all other countries in the world, whether they be here in Europe or in our own region.